Welcome to the Tuesday, November 12, 2024, closed session meeting of the East Bay Municipal Utility District Board of Directors. President Lisa R. McIntosh is absent and excused. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan.
Present.
Director Katz is online.
Present.
Director Lenny.
Here.
Director Young.
Here.
Vice President Patterson.
Here. If members of the public are online or wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom.
We have no public comment online, and we have no public comment in the room.
Then we will move to the agenda. I'm sorry. We do have speakers here?
We have no speakers?
speakers.
No, so we'll
All right,
go ahead
then
and
we'll
move
go
to.
down to the closed session agenda. The board will now convene to conference room 8 to discuss closed session agenda items 1 and 2, and is scheduled to return for the regular meeting at 1:15 to the Tuesday, November 12, 2024, regular business meeting of the East Bay Municipal Utility District Board of Directors. We will receive reports from this morning's planning committee under item 23. President Lisa R. McIntosh is absent and excused. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan.
Present.
Director Katz online.
Present.
Director Lenny.
Here.
Director Young.
Here.
Vice President Patterson.
Here. Please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now receive a presentation recognizing East Bay MUD veterans.
Thank you, Vice President Patterson. In recognition of Veterans Day, which was observed yesterday, the district would like to honor all the veterans who came before us, those who stood alongside us, those who are still serving, and those who will come after us. Today, the district is opening the meeting with gratitude to honor those active employees and board members who have demonstrated their commitment to this country. We thank you for your protection of our liberties and your continued stewardship at the district and of our natural resources. I'll now hand this over to Sylvia Johnson, Senior Human Resources Analyst in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, to begin the presentation.
Give us one moment, Sylvia. It's not working. What do you need it to do? Oh, Lord, I locked it. Password? Can you enter the password? One moment, technical difficulties. It's the sixth, it is. Okay. And is it Control L? What is it, Alt L? Alt L? Interesting. Let me see. All right, and how to shrink? All right. And we're ready.
Okay, I'm just gonna scroll through each slide so you all can read the names.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Oh,
And
yes.
raise the mics, if you can raise the mics.
Okay.
And the one on your left.
Okay, I'm
Perfect.
just going to scroll through each slide so you all can read the names of our veteran employees. There you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
I didn't see my name on there.
Want to go ahead to announcements from closed session, I'm checking right now.
She's asking if there was any announcements from closed session. I don't think there
No. There's nothing from closed session. I just was pointing out, I'm happy to exclaim that I am a veteran. That's what I wanted to make sure I was not excluded. Derry, that's one for you. Okay, then let me say, there are no publics, there's one public speaker. Do we have any other public speakers online? None?
We have no public comment online, but you do have one card at your place?
Yes, we do. Then at this time, Mr. Gregory Chan, would you come forward, please?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And we're overdue for lunch.
My name is Greg Chan, and I previously worked here for about 21 years. When I retired, you all acknowledged my contribution here at a board meeting, and several of you spoke expressing your thanks for my contributions to the district. Well, I've heard many of you are or may be moving on to other things next year. And I wanted to acknowledge those departing as well as all of you before that change occurred. I realize I've not had the privilege of working with Directors Chan and Gomez, and it's good to see you. I've come to thank you, the board, and the staff for your service. You see, my wife and I took an informal poll at our kitchen table, and it lasted for 45 minutes. It was more like a heated discussion. And we discovered this. Given the tens of hundreds of governmental bodies, civic organizations, special districts, church organizations, nonprofits, the list is endless that she and I have been involved in, we concluded that EBMUD is consistently one of the highest rated entities. When we turn on the faucet, when we flush the toilet, when there's a drought, when we're wondering about the environmental impacts of a project, even when there's a rate hike or some such other issue, compared to all the other organizations I noted and compared to other utilities, and electricity, telecom, natural gas, the elected leadership, the staff leadership, and the rank and file at EBMUD really deserve our thanks and kudos, as you all are one of our highest rated entities. The way you carry out the 100th anniversary celebrations, are scurrying to replace more and more old pipe every year, understand DEI, dealt with the pandemic disruptions, and make sound and farsighted environmental policy, thank you. Of course, every organization can improve, so don't stop working to make a more perfect water and wastewater district, working to support your human resources, working more efficiently, innovatively, and fairly, responding to community concerns and issues, not just reacting. More importantly, this is not a complaint. This is a recognition of jobs well done and an organization well run. To all of you on the dais, thank you. To all the staff and rank and file in the room and in their offices and in the field, thank you. I look forward to having a drink with each and every one of you, staff and board, in the near future, if you're buying. And I miss Director McIntosh, but I will try to catch up with her as soon as possible. So thank you and salute.
Before you leave, may I recognize?
Is that the 3-minute buzzer?
Hit
Amen.
it.
Amazing timing. But before you walk away, I feel like you should be recognized. Gregory Chan was actually my standby officer for 1 year. So he served to be on, and for Director Mellon for many, many years. So thank you for your incredible contributions,
Well,
Gregory
thank you all.
Chan.
Thank you all. I turned the faucet on and it's there. Can't say that a lot for a lot of things,
Thank you, Greg.
You still got it. Well, at this time, we will move to the consent calendar, items 1 to 16.
And please note that the board received comments from Eric Larson on item 13,
13.
and those comments and attachments will be included as a part of the meeting record.
But no objection, just,
No, it's comments. I just want to make a point to be sure I read it.
Okay.
I didn't read this morning. Okay,
I'll move the items.
I will second.
we have a motion by Director Lenny and a second by Director Young. Madam Secretary?
Roll call vote.
Can I make a comment?
Yes. This is Director Katz?
Yes, this is Director Katz, and why I don't feel like the information in item 13 requires us to remove it from the consent calendar. I would like to request either a written response from the general manager in the near future or referral to either the Ledge HR or planning committees for a review of the matters in Mr. Larson's comments to us.
Yeah, and I do know staff has been in communications with Local 444, and we will investigate other options as the term of this contract nears.
You ready for the roll call vote?
Yes.
Director Chan?
Present. Yeah.
Dir-
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
Vice President Patterson.
Yes. Um, We will now move to determination and discussion. The general manager will introduce the items.
Yeah.
We're now on item agenda
Yes, so,
17.
so for our first item, it's a resolution, to consider a resolution to authorize an amendment to the agreement for employment of the general counsel, Derek T. McDonald, to extend the agreement for an additional 2-year term through July 4th, 2027. If authorized, the proposed amendment to the employment agreement will take effect today, November 12th, 2024. There are no other changes recommended to the employment agreement at this time.
I will move the item.
I'll second that.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Director Katz, do you have any comments before we go to roll call vote?
No, thank you.
Director Chan,
Abstain.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
Vice President Patterson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item. This is to file the report and recommendation of the general manager for revisions to the existing recreation fee schedule for calendar year 2024 to calendar year 2025 and set a public hearing. I'll note that this was discussed at the October 22nd, 2024 Finance Administration Committee meeting, and the committee unanimously supported the proposal. And we have Chuck Beckman here, who has a brief presentation to describe the proposed revisions prior to the board considering the changes.
One moment, Chuck, while we share the screen.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will jump right into it here. So I'll start with a little bit of background on the Comanche Mobile Home Park. So the district owns and operates 3 individual mobile home parks around Comanche Reservoir. There's a total of 195 sites between all 3 parks. 2 of the parks are at Comanche North Shore in Amador County, and the third is in Calaveras County, Comanche South Shore. As of now, currently we adjust mobile home rent annually, and we adjust it based on the percent change in the housing and urban developments fair market rents, and I'll refer to that as the HUD FMR from here on, for 2-bedroom homes in Amador and Calaveras County. So basically, we take the change from one year to another for both counties and average those, and then we reflect that change in rent every year when the HUD FMR comes out. So from the period 2010 to 2023, the change in the HUD FMR ranged from negative 5.5% to 5.1%. And over that period, the overall increase was 1.6% per year. 2024, the HUD FMR for Amador and Calaveras counties was 12.5% higher than it was in 2023, and now looking into 2025, we're looking at a 9.9% increase. So these were larger increases than we had seen in the HUD FMR.
When you say 12.5% greater, you mean that the increase was 12.5%. It was a 12.5% increase and a 9.9% increase, not, because that's different than 12.5% greater, right?
Yeah, so basically,
It was $100, it went up to 112.5.
Yes, yeah, yep. So in response to that 2024, the 12.5% increase in the HUD FMR, the Comanche Regional Park Advisory Board proposed that the district adopt a rent cap of 5% on future rent increases in the mobile home parks. The board elected not to adopt that proposal because it would limit revenue from mobile home rent. So staff kind of went back to the drawing board and came up with a different proposal that incorporates what we're calling a carry forward balance. And basically, in simplest terms, what it does is it spreads out larger increases in the HUD FMR over a series of years. And as was mentioned earlier, this proposal was presented to the Finance Committee on October 22nd. Oops. Okay. So I'll have a couple of slides that help me explain this later, but this is just going to give kind of a general overview of what we're proposing. So our proposal is to continue to use the HUD FMR to calculate the annual increases in rent for the mobile home parks, but we would implement a rent cap that would range between 5 and 10%. It initially would start at 5%, but could range up to 10% in cases where our carry forward balance, which I'll explain, climbs up. So any balance of a fee increase in excess of the effective rent cap at the time would be placed into a carry forward balance or sort of banked and then applied to the years, the rent for the year following. And then we would just keep carrying that bank forward as time went on. So this slide shows a little bit better how that sliding fee would work. So we'll use this year as an example. We're looking at a 9.9% increase in the HUD FMR, but we have a zero balance in our carry forward because this is year one. We would have an effective rent cap of 5%. If over time the HUD FMR increases enough to create a carry forward balance between 8 and 12%, then that fee cap would slide up to 8%. And then if we exceeded 12%, that fee cap would go up to 10%. That's the highest it would go is 10%. And the idea behind this is that we don't want that carry forward balance to grow too much over time. We want to, the intent here is again to spread those rent increases out over time, but we don't want that balance to be built up too high. We want to try and get the change in the HUD FMR applied as soon as we can. So this table shows a hypothetical sort of run through of an eight-year period. And I'm just going to use this to kind of walk us through what this would look like from year to year. So in the column on the left, we have our years, and I'll start here in year one. So we have a base rental rate, and that's going to be the current rental rate for the year of $708.97. Our hypothetical increase in the HUD FMR is 9.85%. And again, because this would be year one, we would have no carry forward balance here, and our effective rent increase, which is a function of the HUD FMR plus the carry forward balance, would be 9.85%. We would cap rent at 5%, so rent would go up 5% to $744.42. And the balance of that 9.85% HUD FMR increase that was not applied will be carried over to the following year, so 4.85%. You look at year two here, we take our base rent, which was the previous year's rent, or the year prior's rent plus the 5%. And our hypothetical HUD FMR increase is 6.1%. So again, we're going to combine that 6.1 plus the 4.85% in the carry forward balance, and that's going to give us an effective increase of 10.95%. I'll point out here that even though the effective rent increase is in excess of 10%, we're still gonna have a 5% cap, so that table that I showed earlier, the rent cap will be based on the carry forward balance. And this is an important point because one point that our residents made was that the way we're calculating rent currently is basically we send the residents a notice of change in rent as soon as we have the HUD FMR available to us. That gives the residents 2, maybe 3 months to sort of plan and budget for a rent increase. With this proposal, residents will actually know a year in advance what the upper limit of the following year's rent increase will be. So they will be able to budget for a rent increase. And they'll know, again, a year in advance whether it's going to be 5%, 8%, or 10%. So, and we can see how, I'm going to bump ahead here to year 4 and 5, where we have, in year 4, we have a hypothetical rent increase of, or HUD FMR increase of 13.5%. That gives us a carry forward, or sorry, at the end of the year, a carry forward balance of 10.85%. So we can see in year 5, the year following, that we have an effective rent cap of 8%. And again, that functions primarily just to keep that carry forward balance down, which helps us in terms of, you know, we're applying the full amount of rent as expediently as possible, but we're also going to end up sliding that rent cap down back to 5%. Any questions on this so far? This is, I'm kind of jumping around here a lot on the table. Okay. So that's how the carry forward balance and the rent cap would function. Next steps to move this ahead, the board would have a hearing date on December 10th of this year, and then would be asked to consider the report and recommendation for approval at that same meeting. Assuming the board approves of the changes, we would then follow the proper noticing to residents, which is a 90-day notice of change of rent. And we would adjust rent with that rent cap in place on April 1st of next year. So basically, if the rent cap was not in place, or this carry forward balance proposal was not in place, mobile home rent for next year would increase 9.9%. But if it is approved, rent would increase 5%, but we would carry that 4.9% balance over to the 2026 rental rates. And that's it. So happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any comments from the public?
No public comment.
Are there any board comments?
I just have one question. How is this being received by the residents up there?
I haven't spoken to every resident, but I did speak with, you may remember Butch Carter, who's been to EBMUD board meetings in the past. I spoke to him last week. His impression was that it was a win for residents, and he understands it's a good compromise to meet the residents' needs and the district's needs as well. And same conversation with another resident from South Shore, who's sort of a community organizer there, Gene Bowie, had the same impression. You know, little bit complicated at first, but he understands how it functions, and he thinks overall it's a good proposal for the residents.
And over what period of time do we kind of, do things kind of even out in terms of being, you know, on par with the overall FMR? Do we know that?
That's a good question. You know, when the proposal to use the HUD FMR was developed in 2010, I don't think anyone anticipated that we would see a 12.5% increase. I'm not terribly familiar with all what goes into calculating the HUD FMR for each county or region. It's been pretty stable over the last 10 years, so I'm not sure. My hope is it'll stabilize and this proposal might be moved, and who knows?
And I might add, I mean, if you go back, about 15 years, if you look, even including the 12.5 and the 9.9%, the long-term average is just under 3%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
So we would, in those events, if the carry forward was 0, our rent increase would be 3%.
Yeah.
It was, or whatever, right? It could be lower than 5%.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention on the table, there have been instances in the past where the HUD FMR change has actually been negative, as I pointed out in that first slide, and this
We're gonna
proposal
lower
would
rent?
not prohibit that from lowering.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll move.
All right,
I'll second.
moved and properly seconded. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Katz confirming that you have no comment before we go to roll call?
Correct?
Roll call vote. Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
Vice President Patterson?
Yes,
Thank you, Chuck.
we are now on agenda item 19.
Yes, that's to adopt a resolution to update the district regulations governing water service, Section 15A, non-payment of bills by single-family residential customers. I'll just note that previously, the MUD Act contained a 12-month limitation on payment plans for certain customers who are late on their bill. Earlier this year, the board supported changes to the MUD Act. Now, on September 30th, the governor signed AB 178 into law. AB 178 allows the district the option to amortize unpaid bills over a period beyond 12 months. To comply with the new legislation, we need to update our regulations governing water service, specifically Section 15A. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Are there any comments from the public?
No public comment?
Any comments from the board?
This will be very helpful. I see our Director of Customer Service nodding. I'll move.
Then
I'll second.
move on, Clifford.
Ready for the roll call vote?
Yes,
Okay. Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
Vice President Patterson?
yes.
Thank you. Next is to review the Board of Directors' comments on the draft board governance manual and policies and provide direction to staff on finalizing the documents for adoption by the board at the next board meeting. And Derek McDonald will lead this discussion.
Can you get it?
Thank you, yes.
Control
So
room?
Risha's going to queue up the slides, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Thank you, Risha. If we could go to the next slide, please.
Can you click? Okay.
Thank you. So I'll just start with a brief recap of how we got here today for members of the public that may not have attended all the board meetings at which this is discussed in the past. So at the November 3rd, 2023 board retreat, the board discussed the fact that, starting next year, there would be probably some new board members, and that it would be helpful to have guidance, written guidance for new incoming board members, as well as for those of you who will be staying with us. And so based on the board's directive, staff drafted 10 governance policies. And 7 of those policies were completely new. They were based on past presidential directives, resolutions passed by the board, and longstanding practice, and also policies that other agencies had adopted themselves. We used as model for some of the language. Those policies were reviewed at several board meetings and committee meetings. And based on the feedback that we received from the board, we took 7 of the policies and turned them into a governance manual. And a draft outline for that manual was presented at the August 27th Admin Finance Committee meeting, as well as 3 policies: the existing ethics policy, the board member reimbursement policy, and a new whistleblower policy, which was essentially language extracted from the ethics policy and made into its own separate policy. May I have the next slide, please? So staff prepared the draft manual, as I said, and we provided it to the board. And we received feedback from several board members, which we then redlined and noted on the draft governance manual, and presented that manual with comments for discussion at the October 22nd board meeting. And at that board meeting, we agreed that we would receive some further comments. And so we have received those comments from board members. And those have been shown in red line in the governance manual provided in your packet. If you can go to the next slide, please, Risha. Some of the comments we received were just a further request for more clarification, so we just redlined those directly into the draft manual. 4 of the comments we received were a bit more substantive, and so we wanted to discuss those with you today, or have you discuss those today and provide us with further direction. And our plan is to, based on the feedback we received today, finalize the governance manual and bring it to you for adoption at the next board meeting. With the policies to be brought to you at a date in January after they've gone through the regular review process for staff. So I'll just go in the order of the slide. The first comment we received was on subsection 4.04 of the manual.
For the
yes.
value or for the edification, I guess that's the right word, of people in the general public who aren't looking at the lengthy, governance document, if you can just name subsection 4.04D, which is in, blah, blah, blah. Give us the English of where that lands in the governance policy
Yes.
for each one of these.
Okay,
Yeah, so 4.04D is part of section 4, principles of conduct. And it is under the principle of working with East Bay MUD staff. And there is language in there that states that board members should recognize that they are the highest authority at East Bay MUD. And in order to avoid disruption to the work of East Bay MUD employees and to allow for the free exercise of information, should avoid attending staff meetings or staff events or entering into staff offices or cubicles unless their presence is requested. That was where the prior language ended. We received a comment state from a board member saying, I do not believe this is appropriate. Board members need to have access to staff and events in order to effectively do their jobs. Clifford conferred with the board president, who then added the language that you see highlighted in yellow on the slide, allowing board members to make an appointment through the general manager or the secretary of the district. Nevertheless, the outstanding issue to be discussed is really generally, should board members be allowed to attend staff meetings or staff events or enter into offices without making an appointment. And so that's really a policy decision of the board that we wanted to bring to you. And with that, I'll just open that first item up for discussion.
and just to be clear, Derek, we actually, there's some stuff under actually section 1 and section 2. I know that you jumped to section 3, but I think we're gonna need to go back after we're done with this.
Yes, and I'm just going in the order of the slide that we have up, which starts with 4.04, 12.01. Those are the 2 major issues, and then 3.04 and 3.05 require less discussion, I think.
Okay,
More of a thumbs
okay.
up or down.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, my reading of all this, and I just want to, for clarity, doesn't restrict communications between board members and staff when it's perhaps, if a staff member contacts me about issues or something like that, there's no need to talk with the general manager or set up a formal appointment or anything like that. Conversations, I just want to make sure that conversations can go between staff and board members without.
That's correct. This is really only to address a board member's physical presence
Okay.
In a meeting of
in a meeting at-
several staff people or more.
or in
right?
people's offices or other events.
Yeah, it's hard to think of this as who we are, but we're kind of intimidating, you know? It's like we hold, we can make all kinds of decisions and we do set the policy. And at the same time, we don't know, I don't even know, the best of relationships that I have with staff are still limited in terms of, how well I know them or how I understand the workings of the work that they do or anything like that. And so I have always made it a practice to refrain from engaging in the day-to-day business of the organization, believe that is best practice, which does not preclude, as Doug said, talking to, asking questions of individuals or addressing concerns that might be raised by a staff person, or the like, but dropping in on a regular department staff meeting would seem, without any advance notice or invitation, I think would be, putting myself in the shoes of the, staff person, I feel like, what's going on here? So I think that adding the, making an appointment, through the general manager so that the person running the meeting has some advance indication of the presence of a board member makes, sort of threads that needle. But there is a power imbalance, and I think recognizing that is important.
Director Katz has his hand up.
Yes,
Go ahead, Director Katz.
Yes, so my view is, in general, that a guiding principle of what to include or not to include in the governance manual is to consider what has been a very strong, consistent practice at the district and needs to be said in the governance manual. So that's my, not to create a new rule, that it would be best left to the new board. But when I look at the language here, I do consider, do we really have to say this? Because I agree with it, and it does seem like this is the practice that has been my understanding of how directors conduct themselves. Not that we've ever really made a bespoken rule, but it does feel like this is how directors have conducted themselves, especially considering that there are exceptions that are carved out and acknowledged that they can and do happen. So I think by there might be a word choice here or there, but I think the revision is a good one, and including the most recent one. One thing I would add, though, is again, it would be rare, it would be not common or expected, but should we refer to the general counsel, because that's a principal officer who supervises staff.
I see. So you're saying add me. I'm just trying to think of a scenario where someone would meet directly with an attorney.
The scenario would be rare, and unexpected. But if we're being consistent, especially, in such a situation, the board member might be expecting confidentiality.
Yeah.
So those So yeah, I suppose we should list it.
Okay, I can certainly add myself.
Then would you want to add the comma as appropriate?
For matters within the district, within the purview of the general counsel.
Well,
or
no,
something.
just across all three of them. Because it
Yeah.
wouldn't be, it wouldn't, if I were to ask Risha, can I drop in on the, DEI department meeting? She might say, well, let me check with Clifford or, right? I mean, because you don't have, discretion. I'm just wondering how it would work, right? It's not getting permission, it says making an appointment. Right? So is it permission or is it an appointment?
Well, I mean, I think the discussion is, just to make an appointment, not asking permission is, if you want to meet with staff, if board members want to meet with staff, they can meet with staff.
We could say, or by arranging a visit through the general manager, or secretary of the district, or general counsel is appropriate.
I mean, what's here is fine.
Why wouldn't we just make an appointment with a staff person ourselves, if that were true? I mean, if the issue is intimidation, and no East Bay MUD employee should be intimidated by a board member, because we don't oversee staff. So, I mean, that is something that I don't understand. I mean, honestly, don't be intimidated by us. We can't do anything, even if we wanted to. But the issue I have, two of them. One of them is the free flow of information. And it has been, sometimes constituents come to me with, and they have different issues. I know, sometimes I've talked to Michael Tagliani. I've just seen him and said, hey, someone's asking me about something in Hayward, and can you tell me what that is? Are you saying that I can't just go by his office and say, hey, Mike Tagliani, this is information that I need? Are you saying that?
It doesn't say that.
Well, that's what I'm
Talk
asking.
about staff meetings or staff events. Right?
But into staff offices or cubicles.
Or entering into staff office.
Yeah, and I would say, generally, it's best to work through me on a lot of these issues, because while, Mike Tagliani or another director may, be aware of their particular issues, they may not understand that I might know that that issue you're bringing up with Mike Tagliani has been discussed with other departments. And so and that's happened before, say with, there's a question about some work that maybe Andrew Lee was involved with that Mike Tagliani is also involved with. Andrew only knows what he's involved with and not others. And my job is to make sure that you have all the information you need, and I have that broader awareness of what's going on. So I think it's important to the extent that you include me in those discussions. I don't want to stop any of those discussions, but I may have that broader view of what's going on. And if I don't know what conversations are happening, it's very difficult for me to really manage the operations of the district.
So, that all may be true, okay? But still, I really do think that if I could get a simple question answered quickly through staff when I'm walking by their office, that should not be forbidden. That is simply just the flow of information. Also, I just don't think it's fair to have rules that just apply to us. We're putting restrictions on ourselves. We could never do something like this. We could never require this or make this a rule for the admins or the plumbers or any other group at East Bay MUD. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. I just feel like it's hostile even. I honestly feel like it's hostile.
Yeah, I might also add, I don't think, if anybody just wanted to stop by anybody else's staff meeting, again, I think the expectation is you talk to the supervisor and say, yeah, I'd like to go to your staff meeting. If you have a reason to talk to staff meeting, you just wouldn't show up into somebody's staff meeting.
Well, I don't, think anybody does. I have no interest in going into staff meetings. I mean, everyone has their own life. But at the same time, I'm just saying that I feel like this would create a hostile work environment because it would create a separate set of rules for the board of directors.
Could I just interject? You know, over the years, we have had pretty good communication without going one-on-one with people or into staff meetings. The customary way in the past is if an issue comes up, it's put on a committee calendar and it's answered through that medium with input from the general manager. Or it could be with Derek. But I don't remember individually wandering into a meeting or interfacing with staff on a particular document. You're now getting into policy. And so the real purpose for this book that we were making was to provide a place where information would be available at hand and not have to go back through all the documentation. And so I'm not favorable for this going directly to staff one-on-one. And I think that gets into policy.
Can I?
Now, if it's going to be a change in policy, I think this part of the discussion should be put over to after January 1 and let the new board thrash it out. I don't think I want to be part of changing things that have worked for me for 26 years. I don't ever remember taking staff on one by one.
Can I clarify my comments? Because I never said I want to take issues to them. I never said I want to take documents to them. What I'm saying is a free flow of information. And, you know, I guess I can't go by anyone's office and say, hey, how are you? How's it going? What's going on in, what's going on in customer service? You know, because that would be not allowed by the rules. So I feel like it's very extreme. I think that we should not be putting rules on ourselves that we would not be putting on anybody else. And I don't think we would put this on anyone else.
But I think official information from the operations of the district should come through the superintendent, through the general manager. And I'm saying, we have access to the general manager. And he's very responsive. Matter of fact, he's the most responsive general manager we've ever had. And there's never been a problem. Yes.
So I don't know, I'm not seeing things, April, as you are. I don't see this as hostile. I see it as an orderly way to conduct business, and I think that we're board members, we're not staff. And so just kind of wandering around the halls of the building seems like kind of an odd sort of scenario for me in the first place. And that if I wanted to speak to customer service and see what's going on there, I have no problem with setting up a meeting to do that and asking them rather than bouncing in and catching them unaware. Maybe their mind isn't there. Maybe they say something that they're not prepared to. Because let's face it, speaking with a board member has a lot different kind of weight than speaking with another staff member or something like that. And I think, like I say, so I just see it as an orderly way for us to get information. And my concern is that I don't want to have staff feel like they are, that they're blocked from reaching us or talking to us if they have something that they want to communicate with us. And I don't know what the policies are for them, whether they're told, hey, don't reach out to the, I mean, I haven't seen that as a problem, but maybe there is, because I've had staff reach out to me and want to talk to me about issues that are on the board agenda, and I welcome that, I always have, and appreciated that. But again, just the idea of that the only way I could get a true answer is to just pop into somebody's office as opposed to setting up a meeting for that. I don't understand that.
I mean, I think if a staff member said, we really prefer that you set up, I mean, if someone said that to me, and it's not like I want to be clear, I don't pop into people's office all day long, every day. I'm only here for meetings. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, that staff members can ask us to make appointments. I'm just saying, I don't think that this is a rule that we would put on any other group of employees. And so I don't know why we would, I mean, I guess we can try to put it on ourselves. You guys can try and put it on me or however. But I feel like there's enough said, so.
This subparagraph, I guess you would call it, is under, it's under, relationships with staff, and it's under the bullet, be mindful of requests and the impact on the use of staff time and resources. So what I think about, I think senior management team level staff is one thing, right? But to go to be make a request or drop in on someone who's a more junior level of staff, and it's hard for me to think of I agree with you, April. I don't mean to be intimidating. Being a board member on the board of EBMUD is a power position, and I think that most of our staff probably view it that way. And so they are on their, P's and Q's about how to react to anything that we might say. So having a heads up or a no surprises sort of an approach, which is what this basically says, is, hey, if you want to talk to somebody, now that's different than passing somebody in the hall and saying, how you doing? Or, hey, I saw in splashes that, this and that. That's different. That's not a matter of East Bay Mud business, right? But I do think if it's a matter of East Bay Mud business, if we say something, somebody's going to automatically or unconsciously or consciously put that at the top of their list when it might not be the most important thing for them to be doing next.
Well,
So I think this is, I agree with Doug, that this is just sort of an orderly and efficient way to manage those conversations.
I mean, I myself have never directed staff to do anything. I'm very careful about everything I say with staff because I understand staff is not under the jurisdiction of the board of directors. So I'm just
There have been
saying.
others who have, though. This isn't all about you, April.
I mean, we had a case earlier this year.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, then that director should not be doing that, and I'm
director
only
isn't here
saying.
anymore.
I am only saying this, that I feel that I get a lot of simple requests for information, not issues, not documents, not problems to be solved, but just little information. And it's very helpful just to pop into someone's office and ask them if they're willing to talk to me. If they're not willing to talk to me, that's fine. I wouldn't take it personally or get upset about it. And I'm not saying anything about the general manager. I think the general manager and the general counsel are very accommodating. I mean, I do think that they're very responsive. I'm not complaining about them. I'm just saying, I feel that this is going to interfere with my work to my ward, and my obligations to my ward. But if the majority is going to pass this, then they're going to pass it. You guys are going to pass it. So I just wanted to have my say.
How about, board members are encouraged to, I don't know, I don't
think it's
I don't
fine
have
the way it
alternate
is.
language. I don't have a problem with this language. And we can always revisit it if it starts, if people don't understand it or if it interferes. I mean, if I get a call from a customer and it relates to their bill, I'm gonna write an email to Clifford and Andrew together and ask the question.
Right, because
Right.
that is an issue, right? And so the issue should go to Clifford, but I'm not talking about issues, so.
Well, or if I get a question from a customer about, I don't know, I mean,
Is the customary though, and that's what I'm speaking to, I'm not talking about the different in personalities and how they go about getting information. But when I have an issue that staff needs to answer, I go through the general manager. I still get the answer, but it goes through the system the right way. Different from a member of the staff wanting to get something through to me. You know, we got rules by which that operates, but you can't, everybody can't be in the cabin driving the truck. Everybody can't drive the truck at the same time. There has to be a systematic way of getting things back and forth. And that's all I want to leave you with. It's odd that I'm thrown in the chair because this is something really the president or our leadership through Lisa should be handling. But in all my times serving as vice president and president, I've probably been in that seat more than anybody. I have had staff come to me with issues, make an appointment, and be concerned. That's partly how D&I got started, because people were retiring from the district. They were concerned about holes that were being left behind. They were concerned about what we looked like when they came on board and what we looked like when they were going out. That's an issue. The union came and I heard them, but they didn't come to talk about yesterday and tomorrow. That was a very important issue, and everybody got behind that because they wanted to see it happen. So it was a positive thing. And I just throw that out to say, that's my take on it. As a board, we can make a decision, but I don't think board members need to be wandering around clerks and staff about a question. You can get a call back from Clifford the same day you ask him a question, if you had one. That's how fast he operates. A little faster than Dennis Deemer and some of the others, but you always got the answer. And it never seemed to break down a relationship, never seemed to hold up the ship, and we're still standing. So I don't think you should have a system that's free flow. That doesn't work because you don't have any record of what was said or what was left behind or how you plan to use any information. Not saying that everything you ask is sensitive or very private or off limits. I'm not saying that. I'm saying anything because that's just not the way a system works. That's not good for holding the company together. That's my take on it. And I'm sorry I talked so long, but Lisa isn't here, and it's too bad because she and I and Doug, we're all going out of here. And I don't want to leave you with the impression that now the ship is free to do what we haven't done in all the time I've been here. I'm not signing off on that.
So the direction we're getting from the majority of the board members present is to leave section 404D as is with the addition of the language that's highlighted in yellow on the slide. Is that correct? Okay. The next item is into section 12.01 of the draft manual. And that section 12 deals with, sorry, I'm just calling it up here. The creation of committees, committee assignments. And there was a request under section 12.01 to have for the board's discussion, to have the vice president play a role in committee assignments in consultation with the president. Currently, my understanding of the process is that board members submit their preferences to the president, who then puts together a list of committee assignments for the boards to vote. And so the request was, and the board member was not wed to this idea, but wanted to discuss the idea of whether or not the vice president should have a role in that discussion, in putting together that list.
I was just thinking of this as a simple mentoring practice that, this would be one way that the vice president could learn the role of the president.
Can I ask a Brown Act question?
I'm sorry, what?
Can I ask a Brown Act question in regard to this?
Sure.
Which is that, one of the things that when I was president, people put in their, requests or preferences or whatever, is to be able to talk to an individual's like, would you be willing to be, our practice has been that the most senior member in a committee assignment becomes the chair. We're obviously going to be in a situation where we have 4 members with less than a year, seniority, and we have, 4 or whatever committees. So what's in the practice of determining, there's very few things that the president of the board actually has, I get to decide X, right? Committee membership is one of those things. And I don't have strong feelings about this, but I do want to know if I'm working with another elected board member who will be sitting on committees and will be presumably chair of one or more of those committees, what's because the president typically doesn't serve on a committee.
Yeah.
With some exceptions, right? Like I've continued to be on the retirement board when I was president. I think Andy stayed on sustainability, whatever. Different ones of us have stayed on, a committee that we held dear or made sense, right?
Yeah, I think depending on the chain of communications, it could raise some Brown Act issues. Now, assuming that the president and the vice president aren't on a committee together, and the president usually isn't on a committee, those direct communications would probably not violate the Brown Act. But if you're also communicating with board members who want to be on the same committee as the vice president or the president, well, then suddenly you've got a quorum together. And so that could raise Brown Act issues.
I understand that. But I think most of that happens in open session. No one has asked, so I haven't been here very long, but nobody has asked me privately which committee I want to sit on. And usually it's, from my experience, it's just that the day that the committees are announced, the president will ask, are there any changes that someone would like to make, and that's a public process.
Risha, can you go through what the process is?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. So the board members submit their preferences. We compile that into a chart. We provide that to the board president. Most of the times there are no conflicts and there are no vacancies. The board president will contact somebody if there is a conflict or if there's a vacancy or nobody has requested to be a chair of a committee. And so that's usually when the conversations happen. But I don't recall conversations happening where there could be a Brown Act issue. And the president, as you said, the president has not normally served on board committees or even the JPAs. That may change going forward, but we haven't done that in the past.
Yeah, but this is proposing a change that would involve the president and the vice president working together to
Correct.
select committee.
So you could have the vice president and another board member on Ledge HR, and that could,
You'd end up with a Brown Act.
that you could possibly have a quorum of a committee discussing committee members.
Yeah, that is possible depending on the
Yes.
nature of the communication.
But, I'll say, the last 3 out of the board presidents did serve on a committee.
But just one.
Just one committee, yes.
And so there was no discussion to be had because the preferences submitted, there was no discussion to be had about the preferences.
Right, and recognizing that it was committee assignments by longstanding board members who've served on the same committees for years in most cases, right?
Yes.
And that's not going to be the case this coming up time. I don't know. I think it's the president of the board's decision of who should be the president of the board's decision on who ends up being on the committees and not an agreement. I don't know if in coordination means, coordination with, Risha certainly isn't deciding who should be on the committee. She's just performing the ministerial functions of moving the process along.
Correct.
And I certainly see the president of the board's role in mentoring somebody who has not held the vice president position before, as well as other new board members. So I concur with that sentiment about, mentorship. I'm just not sure that this is, that this one is I don't know how it's gonna go. We might get, everybody wants to be on Ledge HR. I don't know, who knows how it's gonna go.
And in that case, I'm just trying to think this through. So in that case, more people want to be on Ledge HR, like 5 people want to be on Ledge HR. That would be, the president and the vice president could just assign people the chairs or wherever they think is best. And then when you get to the open meeting, talk about, basically what kind of changes can we make, or what does someone want, what changes do people want to make? I remember that happened my very first meeting, that I was supposed to be on Ledge HR and John Coleman wanted to sit on Ledge HR, and I was supposed to sit on planning, and Lisa McIntosh wanted planning. So basically, we did it all in open session. I don't really care. I feel like I'm arguing this point, but this is not something that's that important.
Let's just leave it the way it's been.
It was just an idea, that's all.
Let's just leave it the way it's been.
Okay, that's fine.
Director Katz, you have your hand up. Thank you for waiting patiently.
Yeah, so is the sense of the board that we're not going to insert the highlights, so I don't need to make a comment if that is the sense of the board?
You're talking section 12.01?
Yeah, I just can't see everybody's faces, so I don't want to.
Yes,
I don't want
that's
to
the
make
sense
a
of the board.
belabored. Okay, yeah, I won't comment then, since that's already the sense of the board. Thanks.
So Director Young, strike the highlights. Director Linney, strike the highlights.
Yes.
Director Patterson, strike the highlights. Director Katz gonna go along with the majority of the board. Director Chan, your sentiment?
Sure, I was always, I'm not married to this, not
Okay.
into this at all.
All right.
So the last two comments were probably won't require as much discussion. It's more of a thumbs up or down. Section 3 of the manual it addresses the role of the Board of Directions. Section 3.04 adds the role of the president. And so there was a request that the language promote and exemplify EBMUD's values of stewardship, integrity, respect, and teamwork be added to the role of the board president, recognizing that the president really is like the leader of the board. So.
Isn't that the role of all board members? I mean, it's fine. I just think it's, each of us, when we're out in our wards, certainly that's,
And I think within the manual, it does talk about all board members, demonstrate these values. I think as Derek was mentioning, just highlighting a little more, because the board president is considered the leader of the board. But within the manual, all board members, it does list this as something all board members should exemplify.
that's fine. I'm fine with it.
Okay.
So
And then the last comment, section 3.05 talks about the role and duties of the officers appointed by the board, including the general counsel. And so there was a request in recognition that litigation is expensive, that the language be added to the duties of the general counsel, exercising fiscal responsibility in the management of special counsel contracts, while making, and then this is kind of my addition to the suggested language, while making such expenditures as necessary to meet EBMUD's legal needs.
can I interrupt? Director Katz, I see your hand up. Is this for subsection 3.04A? Director Katz?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was on mute. I just want to make sure that we're on 3.04A, that this is being recast from board president to members of the board of directors in the most appropriate place. Is that what we agreed on, or are we keeping it as is?
So are we leaving the language in 3.04A specifically for the role of the board president, or are we including this language for the entire board somewhere else in the manual? That's your
What?
question?
That's my question, yeah. And I agreed with the comment that this is best stated as applicable to the board as a whole.
Yeah,
I think that's what we agreed. I mean, this was not meant to be exclusive of all the other members of the board. It's just that the board president, as the leader of the board, would would have the burden, or should exemplify this as much as possible. They're the example. They are the leader. So this was, we could certainly add language saying, as the leader of the board, and also write that everyone is expected to practice these traits.
Yeah, and it's already in the manual under general principle of conduct that really these values of stewardship, integrity, respect, and teamwork should be demonstrated by all board members. So that's already in the manual.
Okay, yeah, the context makes it look like it's singling out the board president for this one. It's really something that should apply to the whole board. So,
But it also should be a duty of the president, I think. And you're right, it should be the whole board, but also should be a duty of the president. I mean, I think it has to do with creation of culture.
We don't have the full text on the slide, so I didn't have the context of where this is fitting in.
I think it could be added to the final bullet, which maybe the final bullet gets moved up, that says, and shall, promote and exemplify East Bay Mud values of blah, 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 blah. Somewhere, add it as a,
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, because we do talk about the board being, the board president really being, creating a culture, the culture that we want to have at East Bay Mud.
Are they creating a culture or?
Promoting the culture of the board.
So what I've heard, what I understand now is to leave the language in section 3.04, but move it as the last bullet. Please correct me if
Well,
I'm
or move the
misunderstanding.
last bullet up, I don't, you know.
Director Katz, you still have your hand up. You have an additional comment?
Yeah, when we are moving on to 3.05B, I had a comment there too.
Okay.
But I wasn't sure where we were on 3.04A.
So 3.04A, we're going to keep the language under the section regarding the role of the board president, noting that it's also in the section pertaining to board members. And we're
Yes.
just going to make it the last or next to last bullet under the role of the board president.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
You're okay with that, Director Katz?
Yes.
Great, and then the last point of discussion, again, was just adding language to the duties of the general counsel regarding exercising fiscal responsibility in the management of special counsel contracts.
So on this one, it makes sense. It states a good function of the general counsel, but I wonder if this fits the focus of the manual, which is focused on the board of directors, and if adding this to the role of the general counsel would be a disproportionate summary of or an incomplete summary of the general counsel's duties. So could we get some feedback on that concern or just the context of what is this handbook supposed to be about? But I don't disagree with the statement itself.
Can I address that? So we actually have, as part of the handbook, the general counsel is responsible for, and there's 8 other bullet points, that, pretty thoroughly covers the responsibility of general counsel. My idea is that we would just add that as another bullet point.
And I think that even though this is a board governance manual, one of its purposes was to educate the board as to the roles of the officers that they appoint.
Right. Yeah, I'm in support of this and recognizing that the board approves all outside counsel contracts, as well. So we have the final say on this, as well, and would expect the general counsel to have done due diligence on this. I'm good with this one. I think it's a good addition.
Okay. There are no other comments that, can we have the next slide, please? Good, so we will make further revisions or not as directed today, and bring the governance manual back for final adoption on November 26th at the regular board meeting. That will be accompanied by a resolution that rescinds various previous resolutions that the manual is derived from, so that this manual and the adopting resolution becomes the operative document going forward. And then as to the 3 policies, we didn't really receive any feedback, but we do plan to circulate those under our regular policy review process and bring those back to the board for future discussion and adoption in January or February.
Okay, question? So, what about the MUD ordinances that you and I talked about? Is that,
Oh, yeah, so you had a comment requesting,
so the
All-
addition,
Yeah.
addition of 11.890, 11.88. So there were a bunch of them that you and I went through,
yes,
and you said that some of them could be added as bullet points,
yes, and so
and they
those,
would be referenced in an addendum, right?
correct.
So, but they're not here. And so, and there's no addendum. So is that something that we could actually have for the next version?
We can, we'll add the addendum to the version that's brought to the board for approval, but I did add all of that language to the addendum itself.
Okay, because
Under
there's
the
no,
discussion of the MUD Act in the addendum, and it talks about all of the powers that the MUD Act provides to the board.
okay. And then, so because I was looking for a sentence or something that refers, under board duties, that refers the reader to the addendum and the additional discussion.
Are we talking about the appendix?
The appendix, I'm sorry,
Sorry,
yes.
okay.
Where is the appendix?
So throughout this discussion, we agreed that the appendix was not something that would be approved by the board because it's just it's referenced in the document. And so when the manual comes back to the board for approval, the appendix will be included with the references to the MUD Act that you're referring to.
Okay, so,
But I can add a footnote under this section of the manual that discusses the MUD Act that references the appendix for further detail. Because it does have some high-level discussion of the MUD Act and the powers that it gives to the board, so.
it is. Actually, there's a lot that's missing. I feel like there's a lot missing from board duties that's in the MUD Act. So, or the role of the board officers. Thank you.
Yeah, and you will see that in the appendix.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank the board for spending all the time over the many months to work on this document. It took a bit, but I think it was well worth it. Just moving on to the appointment of the manager of maintenance and construction / water operations. I'm delighted to bring to you for your consideration the appointment of Roberto Cortez as the manager of maintenance and construction and water operations. Roberto began his career as a water treatment trainee for the city of Pittsburgh before coming to the district. 24 years ago, he joined EBMUD as a senior water treatment operator, and while as an operator, went back to college at UC Berkeley to obtain his undergraduate degree in civil engineering. I'll just note that I've told him before, I don't know how he did it because he was raising two very young children. He was working a full-time job and getting a degree in civil engineering at Berkeley, and I could only do one, which is I could only do one at a time. So Roberto, congratulations on that. Roberto has significant experience in water operations, maintenance, and has also worked in the engineering department. And for the last 6 years, he's overseen the operations of the district's water supply system. I'm happy to answer any questions prior to your consideration of this appointment.
I'll move.
Yeah, I'll second, yeah.
Congratulations. Well, not quite. We have to vote, I guess.
Director Katz, do you have any questions or comments before we go to a roll call vote? I think that's no. Okay. Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
Vice President Patterson?
yes.
Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
You have a few comments here. Thank you, Clifford. Good afternoon, board members, Vice President Patterson. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to serve as the next manager of water operations here at EBMUD. I also want to thank General Manager Chan and Mr. Dave Breaks over here, Director of O&M for this opportunity. Over the last 24 years here at EBMUD, I've had the pleasure to work throughout the district in many capacities and with many employees. I look forward to continuing to work and work with all the talented staff we have here in the district and continue to do what's best for the district and our ratepayers. I'm excited and I'm ready to get to work on my new role. And I do want to say one more thing, because as Clifford mentioned, my road here was not easy, but my wife is here in attendance, and I also want to acknowledge her for supporting me all of these years. So Thank you very much again.
Congratulations. Lloyd. And thank you to your wife, too. I know how difficult it is for the family when you have these kinds of jobs. Okay, moving on. Earlier this year, we conducted an employee experience survey in support of our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. The survey was conducted by WinSource Group, which has conducted similar surveys for many other companies. We had an excellent response to the survey, with approximately 950 district employees participating in the survey. And Derry Moten, our Director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture, will share the results of the survey and talk about our next steps.
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
Glad to be able to share this information with you today. The employee experience survey, as Booker mentioned, has been an element of our work for some years. We have, over the last several years, introduced our district values advocates who had the initial concept of us having a regular employee feedback program. We then integrated that information into our diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan, and that feedback program includes a couple different elements, and this is one of the key elements, is to have an annual survey that allows us to have employees provide their thoughts and their sentiment on the district as a whole. And so today we will provide you with a little bit more information about both the survey, the findings, and kind of how this fits into kind of our overall work culture strategy. So one of the things that we feature in our managers and supervisors training is this model, which is a model of core drivers of successful organizations. And that kind of fits into three key things: the organizational strategy, organizational design, and the third element is organizational culture. And that is comprised of values and needs of employees, leadership programming, our human resource systems, and the organizational character, which kind of, this survey allows us to get a little bit of information about what the behind the scenes character and employee experiences and perspectives are. So the element, the survey that we went through a competitive process to identify is using a Qualtrics EX25 model of employee experience. Qualtrics is an organization that has roughly 18,000 different organizations that participate in employee experience surveys. So we're using this survey, which allows us to also have our data plus comparative data for other organizations and kind of our findings here. The model is driven by 5 key performance indicators, which are engagement, experience versus expectations, intent to stay, which is a retention series of questions, the issue of inclusion, and then the factor of well-being. So those are the 5 key performance indicators that are here, and there are 25 different drivers that employees are asked about that help us not only understand the key performance indicators, but also give us kind of factors to be considered in looking at how we address those factors. So the district-wide findings, during September, we had roughly 13 different presentations to employees to talk about results. We had about 950 employees that participated in receiving those results and getting that information. Overall, our response rate to the survey was actually 72% of employees did complete the survey. So this has probably been the most comprehensive survey that we've had to date. We had 4 virtual sessions via Microsoft Teams, and then we had 9 in-person sessions at 7 different locations, which allowed us to get in front of a lot of employees in a lot of different locations, including wastewater and all the way to also including our service yards and upcountry as well. So we'll start with the key findings here. And again, we're going to give you the key findings at the key performance indicator level to give you some information and also talk about some of the factors that go with that. So in terms of our first item on engagement, engagement really is about fostering a workplace where employees feel motivated and connected to the purpose of the organization, and they're proud to make contributions to the district on a whole. So we had roughly 83% of employees identified that number one, that they would recommend EBMUD as a great place to work to family or friends. This is a very strong number that we have here. Also, when it comes to people feeling like they have a sense of a personal accomplishment with the work that they do, 79% of employees stated that that was the case for them. So when we look at this in comparison to other organizations that have 1 to 5,000 employees, the district scored 5% higher than competitive organizations. And to think about some specifics, Local 39 had the highest engagement level, and we also, again, as I referenced, are 5% higher than other organizations similar size. On key findings around employee experience versus expectation, the question that employees were asked was, overall, what extent does your experience working at East Bay MUD meet your expectations? And we have kind of two factors here. We have kind of how many employees feel like the district meets expectations, which was 44%. And then we had an additional 41% said that that experience exceeded or greatly exceeded expectations. So a total of 85% of overall employees believe that the district either meets or exceeds their expectations. Now within this, there was a couple of factors when we talk about those drivers previously that contribute to this score. A couple of the drivers that we identified is two areas that we want to work on improvement is, and that's around career development and open and honest communication. So these became two factors that we were looking at within this. Again, in this case, in this comparison with other organizations, the district is 3% higher than our comparative organizations. On intention to stay, again, our retention factor, in this case, 70% of employees stated that they were intend to be at the district for more than 5 years. 12% at 3 would say over 3 years, 11% over 1 year. And then we have, again, some smaller numbers on people who are lower than that. And the interesting point is we still do have quite a significant number of employees who are retirement eligible. So when we look at these numbers, that balances into that factor as well. So in inclusion. Inclusion is how we look at creating the environment and a culture that ensures that people have a sense of belonging, that they're valued for their differences and are empowered to participate and contribute on a whole. This area is an area that we want to work on. And again, we've been working on our diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan. And this is a factor that still becomes a factor for us to focus on. Yes.
Darian, seeing that, I just, if you could explain this, the qualifier you have on here, that utilities using the Qualtrics methodology did not utilize this KPI. What does that mean?
Yes, when we looked at our comparisons, we did 3 comparisons. We compared ourselves against all organizations in the U.S., organizations between 1 to 5,000 employees, and then any other utilities that completed it. Now, when we selected to actually do this, we had an opportunity to work with the vendor to identify which questions we would ask, and we actually tried to ask as many of those questions as possible. When we looked at comparative utility agencies, none of the comparative utility agencies actually asked the questions that fit into inclusion.
Huh, okay. And how many questions was that?
It actually, there were two core questions and then 3 additional drivers.
Huh.
So in this case, again, between 1 to 5,000 employees, we scored 13% lower, which again, an area that we want to continue to work on. And the 3 key questions that were here was a question about employee sense of belonging, which we were at 68% of employees stated that they felt that they had a sense of belonging here, 66% about whether they felt like they could be themselves at work. And then, do they believe that all people can succeed at the district without regard to their personal identity? Only 55% of employees agree with that. So that is an area that definitely is something that we want to continue to work on, which again, continues to validate the reason we need to continue to work on our diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan. On well-being, which is the 5th KPI, well-being is about being supported in the work environment and employees feel balanced, respected, and positive about their roles. When it came to self-positivity, employees, 79% felt positive about their work and their work experience. Trusting relationships, employees feel like did they have relationships with individuals that they had trust around. 75% found that to be a case. And then whether people felt energized at work, this became a factor where 55% of employees stated that they felt energized with the work. And specifically with this one, the big factors that we got comments about that related directly to this was work-life balance, whether people felt like they had a real work-life balance, and also an issue around supervisor and manager support. And again, the district score is about 5% lower than our comparison agencies. So, summary of the recommendations. So within the survey, employees got a chance to actually write in specific comments. Those comments were tallied through the vendor process, and the vendor kind of came up with these summary of recommendations. Number one, that we need to enhance leadership transparency and ethical practices, improve communication and collaboration, strengthen career development and recognition programs, modernize processes and technology, and promote inclusion and well-being. So those became employee recommendations through the survey process. So to talk about our next steps in action planning, the process that we're using has kind of two levels of change that we focus on. One is kind of district-wide, referred to by the vendor as outer loop items. Those are district-wide changes that we want to focus on. Again, they're larger, more strategic changes that would become district-wide, primarily led by senior management team, HR, and ODEC. And then we have inner loop items, which are departmental new habits, and each department has received a summary of their specific data, and those departments will be working on some specific things for themselves. So district-wide actions, we kind of identified kind of these three as kind of high-level actions for the district to work on district-wide. Again, enhanced communication. Again, looking at how we communicate overall, how do we continue to make communication as effective as possible for all employees. Next is the development of more career development programming. So again, an item that we are conscious that we want to continue to develop, and again, adding more opportunities for mentorship, other types of training, besides our core leadership trainings, which get into kind of career development items and career employee mobility programming. And then number three, supervisor and manager responsiveness. Training managers and supervisors to be more accessible and to actually be responsive to employee feedback. And again, putting this as an ongoing mechanism will help us to work toward how that works. And again, this is specifically most highly kind of felt from employees in Local 444 and 2019.
And Derry, maybe you can also, on district-wide actions, you can talk about some of the work that we did at the senior management team retreat, some of the follow-up meetings we've had with the diversity committees and the unions and the like.
Absolutely. So at the senior management team retreat, we did take data specifically that we got from this process, and we actually integrated that into our discussion at the senior management retreat to prioritize next step actions. So that led us to come up with a series of actions that senior management team is looking at. We had a meeting last week with the diversity committee and the values advocates and some other employees to actually start vetting some of those things, get some additional feedback from those employees about their consideration about the effectiveness of the proposed actions. And we'll be continuing to put that together and reporting that out to all employees coming up here. So part of this process is to not just kind of get the data, but actually have the data follow more detailed discussions and fully integrate the action planning process in this. So when it comes to working at the departmental level, our team has put together two kind of resource documents for all managers and supervisors. One is a driver tactics guide, which takes all of the 25 drivers that are part of the overall program here and actually provides potential actions that a manager could look at and evaluate to see how those actions might assist them in their process. The other thing is an overall survey action planning guide, and that action planning toolkit then provides them again with some opportunities to kind of think about exactly how they want to engage conversations and how they want to again activate some of those tactics that they may find in the guide. And the guide goes through and actually identifies things that can be quick win opportunities, things that can be longer term actions, but they again all kind of provide opportunity for both dialogue and for tangible actions to come out of the survey process.
So the overall action planning process, again, as I referenced, is kind of a structured process to think about, number one, doing an assessment of data. As Clifford referenced, one of the first actions that the senior management team did was to actually talk about the data, think about the specific things that are included in the data. The second thing is then have huddles. And the huddles are basically opportunities to take the findings that we get from the assessment and then look at and have conversations with employees about what those look like, which became that next step that we took with the values advocates and with the diversity committee to vet ideas before we actually try to roll those out. And the next thing is taking our actions and then again putting ourselves back in position for more listening, because again this is kind of a cyclical process that we're putting into place as again more of a strategic action to have an ongoing opportunity for employee voice to be heard. So the next phases around continuous improvement here is, again, as I mentioned, the district is working on kind of our overall approach. We're then also working with department action plans. So members of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture have all of the SMT members assigned to actually work with them to develop their plans for their departments. And then we have ongoing monitoring engagement, which will, again, allow us to kind of continue to work with those senior management team members to look at what the actions they're taking in their work groups are and how we can continue to support those efforts as they go forward. And again, annual review and survey preparation, because we will not only do this survey, but 1 year we will also do a second survey, which will be a follow-up to this. So our data this time will be a benchmark for us, and we'll be able to kind of look at ourselves over at a minimum a 3-year window. So we are currently contracted with the vendor to work 3 years on this project. And again, we will continue to look at different ways we can continue to gather employee feedback even beyond that. So I want to open up for any questions or comments or thoughts that any of the board members have.
I just have one question you stimulated in your last. Have we done any kind of surveys like this before?
We've done somewhat similar surveys, but we've not gone into the survey process looking at specifically how we gather data and then go back and benchmark and then look at the data again. So we did have, almost 10 years ago now, we had the Schnur report. The Schnur report did not work this way. It actually worked by focus groups. So Alan Schnur and his team actually did focus groups with roughly 150 employees. That gave us some general data that we were able to work on. The outcomes of that became our district values, which it was great to hear you all kind of integrating those into your handbook. And also it worked on some operational things that we wanted to do, which became kind of an update of our employee recognition program, the state of the district addresses that we had previously done. There were several things that came out of that survey, which became, again, part of our work. The second then was then the Winters report. The Winters report asked specifically about DEI items. And in that case, the survey that was done, we only had a 45% response rate. So we didn't have a really strong response rate to that. So in comparison, this we enter into kind of with a predicted cycle to continue to gather feedback. And again, the great thing is we did have 72% response rate on this, which makes this data a little bit more comprehensive than data we've gotten in the past.
All right. Thank you. And even though the survey that was taken 10 years ago was obviously different, the apples and oranges situation, was there any kind of conclusions or anything that you could compare that says, hey, we're doing better now or worse now than we were 10 years ago, or it's too hard to compare?
Well, it's a little different because there's a little different twist to the questions. At that point, we were asking about district values, and we were looking specifically at how do we cultivate values with the understanding that we had this tsunami of transformation coming in terms of retirements. So, yeah.
Sort of a follow-up question to that. So with this, universe of 18,000 companies that we're kind of benchmarking to, as we go, forward in doing this, I mean, at what point are we kind of setting goals for where we want to be with regard to these? It's a little tricky because, a survey is, you really do want to take the pulse. You don't want to, you're not after getting, 95% or, whatever the number is. But what are you thinking in terms of, sort of how you measure this over time, and how do we, track the things the action plan that we're doing and seeing the results of it.
Yeah, this takes us kind of that core driver factor. So when we look at this, part of it is how do we do continuous improvement to the work culture? Because the ultimate goal with the work culture is have employees feel empowered to be able to be effective at their jobs, right? So that becomes kind of the factor that we're looking at. And so to the extent that any of these factors or the key performance indicators here are potential hindrances to that, we want to address those factors to continue to make the work atmosphere effective, and that all employees have somewhat of an equal type of experience. So I think what we'll be continually driving for is, again, to make sure the inclusion score specifically does come up, because that does directly impact whether people feel comfortable actually performing their roles. The engagement factor then also kind of gets into how motivated do individuals feel, does the environment supporting their effort to give good work to the district. So I think it's the comprehensive look at how effective we can be as an organization is kind of the big driver. And so again, to continue to look at areas that need improvement, and can we continue to strengthen those areas is kind of the overall goal.
Hey, Director Chan, you have any questions?
No.
Give a chance for Andy. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do think it would be interesting to, while we can't clearly measure improvement, I think even some of the phrasing of the questions might have just more complex stories behind one statistic, which is why I think it would be interesting to see if there are any trends among those that answered the question that had a significant number answering of a difference in success depending on their identity. That I think delving into crosstabs on that question would be of interest to try to discover possible contributors to that trend.
Yes, we tried to include some of that data in the memo, and we also will have a final report that will have a little bit more expanded data on there.
All right. I think that concludes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Derry. Finally attached is the monthly report. I will note that on page 14 of the monthly report, it stated that we had settled a lawsuit with Flatiron West. That was incorrect. It should have been Bay City Mechanical. And then at your places is the Speakers Bureau, as well as the Los Vaqueros JPA agenda. We weren't able to include that in the board mailing last week because it wasn't prepared in time, and so we've shared it with you at your places today. And that concludes my reports.
Great. I'll let Bill take over from here. We're just finished Jerry's report, and we're at the reports and the director comments. Reports from the meetings.
I hope you will excuse me. As aging causes problems. And you have to go with the flow if you understand what I'm saying. Let me just compliment Derry and say that we're seeing a transition in the workforce, and the work that you're doing is very important. I'm not going to be around a lot longer, but I'm glad to see it coming into focus. And I just wanted to express those comments to you and to Clifford and to senior management, and in particular for making sure things work. We have a great opportunity always.
Excuse me, Director Patterson, Vice President Patterson, can we hold for one moment? Teo or Arnie, the boardroom camera is no longer a part of the meeting. And so that means we're not live streaming, so can we hold for one moment?
Who's that?
Just one moment, we're giving the staff an opportunity to rejoin the meeting. Teo or Arnie, can you please text me and let me know the status of the boardroom camera? They're checking now. Give us one moment, because Director Katz is online.
Can we not continue even though we have audio?
We have Director Katz online, so I don't know off the top of my head. Can we just give one moment? It's not just audio, it's also video. And so that means we're also not live streaming. The Zoom participants have access, but anybody in the public who's watching from EBMUD.com, they can't see the meeting.
Oh, but people who are signed in directly to Zoom can, but
The people on Zoom can see the meeting, but the people who are accessing via EBMUD.com cannot. Did he join the meeting yet? No. Okay. And it's saying that the camera is also off on Zoom, so give us one moment. Thank you. Having technical difficulties. All right, so they have to reboot the computer, and so we're going to end the Zoom meeting and restart. Director Katz, we're going to end the Zoom meeting and restart, so give us 2 minutes, and then please
Okay,
rejoin
and
the meeting.
if I may, I believe I need to excuse myself, given the hour where I am.
Yes.
And that we've gotten through the business of the day. Thank you. I'll see you next
Hold
week.
on, Risha,
Bye.
Derek, do we have-
people online are saying they can't see us, so.
Okay,
even, but not if they're logged into eastbaymud.com?
I'm getting, hold on, go ahead.
So we are live streaming. What the live stream sees is what we're presenting on the screen.
They just can't see the board camera.
But they can hear us.
Okay.
So
But they
can we
can
just
hear.
continue?
Okay,
Yeah, let's
yes,
just
we can
finish.
continue. Okay. Go ahead. Arnie and Teo, if you restart the PC, are you turning off live streaming?
Don't have them do anything.
Don't restart if you haven't already. Only Zoom is affected. Okay, we can go ahead and continue. Thank you.
And committee reports?
There are only 2 committee reports.
Yes, continue. Yeah.
Then we have committee report,
Yes.
Planning committee,
we had planning this morning,
yeah.
planning.
Yeah, sorry. The planning committee met this morning and had 3 reports. The first report was on the annual readiness report, which deals with our ability to respond to emergencies. We talked about things like having water, mutual aid, and other things. There's a lot going on in that area. Accepted that report. We then turned to an update on the Green Gen pump storage project, which is a project planned in the Upper McCollum to take advantage of the differing rates for generating power. And it's in the, sorry about that. I'm getting new glasses today. I'm very excited. That's still in the planning stages. It's not our direct project, but we are weighing in with concerns. And then finally, we reviewed revisions to the watershed rules and regulations at Comanche, which include prohibiting the use of jet skis and other personal watercraft, and also prohibiting alcohol use from May 1st to September 30th in campgrounds and day use areas, which is also approved.
Okay. Are there other items or director comments that want to be proposed at this time?
I have comments, and I'll be brief.
Cool.
So anyway, I wanted to thank David Briggs and General Manager and staff, Mona, being here in the room, for helping with the, the ward briefing that we had on Halloween, and it was really nice. I think it was a little bit of a hard event to pull off at 7:30 a.m. on Halloween day, but we did manage to get over 20 people there. Well, I counted 18, but anyway. I thought that David Briggs gave some good advice, and really trying to be mindful of that when you're packing your, part of this was on emergency response. But when you're packing your go bag, if you wear glasses, make sure you have an extra pair of glasses in your go bag. And I thought that was really good practical advice. But, overall, I think it was an event that was really appreciated. I had fun. I got to dress up as Minnie Mouse. And also Tim McGowan dressed up as Harry Potter. So, and it was a beautiful room, the food was great, and we just got so many compliments. I received so many compliments. I don't know if you talked to anybody, Clifford, since there. And then, yeah, it was a great event. So again, thank you, everyone, people that I named. David, I hope you had fun.
Yes.
It was a fun event. Okay, so that was one thing. Second thing I wanted to mention is I found out through some of the through the county that EBMUD presented on October 21st to the Castro Valley MAC. Next time, please let me know that is what you're going to do. I understand 2 MAC members asked basically where the director is during the presentation. So, General Manager, I hope when that happens, if people are asking for my presence at a MAC meeting, that someone would contact me and let me know people are asking for me. I had to vet several upset people about why I wasn't there. It's considered disrespectful, so just let me know. You're gonna be presenting.
Yeah, and we do, and I also for all the board members, remember to take a look at the Speakers Bureau, because all that information is within
It
the Speakers.
wasn't, so with the Speakers Bureau, it didn't say that there was a presentation. So every month, it does mention that, I guess somebody listens. That's what normally happens, is someone listens to the MAC meetings. But that's different if there is a presentation that should be noted on the Speakers Bureau.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to say thank you also for my award event, happened 2 days after the election, last Thursday. We had reasonably good attendance, and I just know how important it is that we reach the community in that way. Everyone's always really impressed with the presentation and the ability to ask lots of questions. And so thank you for all the staff who helped put that together and make it happen and make it really professional. Thank you.
How many people attended?
Well, I joined with you. We had a joint meeting with the community. I'm sorry.
I
Yeah.
gotta go, I'm sorry.
Okay. And it was very fruitful. Saw a lot of old timers, people I hadn't seen in a long time. And got a chance to stand beside Doug Lenny. And his wonderful wife came to the event. It's just great to be in that kind of camaraderie in what we call the EBMUD family. And so I want to thank the staff as well. Are there any other items to be brought before us today? Hearing none, then the next meeting of the Board of Directors will be held Tuesday, November 26, 2024 at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.